Okay, good morning. So today we're going to start out with a question relating to last week or the week before. And this question, the purchase of treasury stock by a corporation increases total assets and decrease in stockholders' equity. So when we look at this, the first thing is treasury stock, the thing to note. So this is a review, but the thing to note, treasury stock, remember, is our own stock that we're buying back. If you see the words treasury stock, that only means one thing. It's our own stock we're buying back. So if we go to buy our own stock back, we're purchasing it, we are spending cash. Cash is an asset, so cash will have to go down, right? Cash is going down because we're spending cash, so assets are decreasing, so this question has to be false, even if I don't know anything else about treasury stock. I'm spending cash, assets decreasing, so this is false. So if you got that right, good for you. If not, a little more study there on that. Treasury stock, spending cash, cash goes down. Okay, that question will remain open for a little while. I've got a few announcements. So first off, Chapter 11 homework, it's due this Saturday, not too bad. I will tell you the next three chapters. So we have Chapter 11 this week, Chapter 12 next week, and Chapter 13 the last week. Not a heavy load at all. This will be much better than some of the chapters that are just cram full. So kind of a breather here for a few weeks. Okay, final exam. The final exam covers chapters 9 through 13. It is not cumulative. The final exam, you have the choice to take it between Monday morning of finals week, May 9th, at 9 a.m. probably. I'd put 9 a.m. to be safe, through Wednesday, May 11th, start by 4 p.m. Okay, so you have that range. If you're in the online section, schedule with ProctorU soon. ProctorU has a lot of exams going on finals week, as you can imagine. So to get the best choice of time slot, schedule with them as soon as you can, at least 72 hours in advance. So there's the final. Okay, extra credit opportunities. Now you have the opportunity to earn through three different methods. First of all, before last semester, I didn't give extra credit. So last semester, I thought this My Accounting Lab accounting cycle tutorial, really great idea. If you're an accounting major, this is something you absolutely positively should do. Everyone else, I mean, the extra credit's great. That is due Saturday, May 7th, 11 p.m. Don't wait until Saturday to do it. I will tell you, you won't be able to get help Saturday to do it. It's something probably spent do a little bit. There's 10 steps, so do like a step a day. If you get stuck on it, email me. Don't spend hours trying to figure it out. If you get to a stopping point where you're stuck, email me, tell me what the problem is, and give me a screenshot, because it's one thing I cannot see of yours. I don't have the ability to go in and see. I can see on homework and all that, but not on this. And more than likely, Amir will email you back, but send it to me. So if you have problems with that, let me know. But it's 2 points added on to your final score, overall score in the class, which is wonderful. So then last week, what happened was I was thinking I would really like to make a welcome video, a short welcome video for my class in the fall. So last Wednesday, I was in here class taking pictures, and I realized the only pictures that I can take, or really that I think of, is to take one of looking out at the class from this angle, which doesn't make sense for students, or of Amir, and we can only have so many pictures of him. So I thought that's what set off the next extra credit contest, is I want pictures from your viewpoint of something to do with this class. I sent an announcement out. So it could be, I sent some examples out, but I'm looking for pictures to use in my video for this fall. And what is the grading? So I said I will award at least 20 students the 1 extra credit point. You get 1 point added to your end of course grade, which is potentially a bump up depending on where you land. And I said a minimum of 20. I have no problem giving it to more than 20, so it's not like you have to compete to be one of 20. I will be happy to extend the field. It is going to be entirely subjective. I'm going to be looking for things that are maybe unique and meaningful in some way. And you also, when you submit it on Blackboard, you have the opportunity to submit a caption to go with it, especially if it's not entirely obvious the connection. The caption can be up to 40 characters, and it does have to be a photo you've taken or a screenshot you've taken, something like that. And so I want to use this in this welcome video I'm putting together for the fall, so I kind of want to show students what the class is about. So it's up to you, your creativity, and basically it's going to you get it or you don't get it, and we'll do that. That photo is due by Saturday, April 30th. Okay, and I put the criteria on Blackboard, and you do have to submit your photo through the Blackboard. You get one submission graded. When I set it up, it might look like you have 5 submissions, but why I did that is sometimes students will submit something and then email me later and say, oh, I want to replace it. Can you delete my entry? And usually I'm nowhere near a computer, so I just said, well, I'm going to open it up so you can submit your submission. If something goes wrong, you could resubmit again, or if you want to replace it with something else. I will only grade your last submission, okay? So even though it says 5, it's just so in case there's an oopsie, you have a chance to submit again. Okay, so there's the photo. So then that led me, I thought after I emailed that out that morning, I was like, so there's one other thing. So these little, for lack of a better name, these little Instagram slides I've been doing, I've only done them for chapters 9, and now I'm working on chapter 12 for next week. But we have chapters 1 through 8. So then I thought, oh, wouldn't that be cool to do some of those things for success tips, study tips, or content from chapters 1 through 8. I'm not sure I put content from 1 through 8. But anyway, so I thought, well, I'll start a phrase contest too. And the phrases have to be short, no more than 120. Of course, less is better to a certain point. So some phrase that you can think of that relates to chapters 1 through 8 if you're going for content, or something about how to succeed in the class, a tip about the class, how to study, something like that. That's also up for grabs. And again, we'll go through and evaluate these. Entirely subjective evaluation. Okay, this is a contest. Can you appeal to this? And those are both due, both the photo and the phrase are due Saturday, April 30th. And it's certainly not required. You absolutely do not need to do it. If you do it, that's great. And since I have no idea how many people are going to submit, I can't tell you how long it'll take me to get through them. Amir and I will be going through them, and basically you'll see on Blackboard sometime by finals week, you'll see a 0 or a 1 for each of these. That's what, and then you'll know. They will never be in my accounting lab. With all these extra credit things, I will take these adjustments and I will take these adjustments and add them to your final score in my accounting lab, but you won't see that. I'll do that. That'll impact your letter grade in Flashline is how that works. Because my accounting lab is not set up to add extra credit in. Okay, so I will do it in the background. So there are those 3 extra credit opportunities for a total of 4 extra credit points, which is pretty significant. And I appreciate your help because I just think this will be kind of cool to do a short video. And I thought people are so much more creative than me that this would be kind of fun. So there's that. Also, the My Accounting Lab extra credit will impact your score in My Accounting Lab until May 8th when I take it out. Can't get it out of there till then. So just know that that's coming out. Okay, and right after, I sent this one out too, but I do want to emphasize it. Right after I sent out the extra credit opportunity, someone sent me an email. Thank you if this was you. I rephrased it slightly here. Does the photo have to be a personal photo? Does the phrase have to be an original? Or can I use Google? Okay, my answer to that is everything you submit has to be original. It has to be your own work. It has to be your own photo. It could be in specific circumstances. I guess you could do a screenshot. It has to be your own work. It has to be pictures you've taken and phrases you've written. Googling a phrase is not going to cut it. And keep in mind, when we judge this, I'm looking for not weird, but certainly more unique than study a lot. Probably isn't going to cut it. But if you would, don't use Google. Submit your own work. Work has to be original. Also, to reminder, absolutely fine to put pictures, to use a picture with people in it, but I need to know the people, each person's name and their email address if you're going to do that. Okay. So thank you for the question. That was a good point. Okay, so Wednesday's feedback. So then that brings us to the feedback from Wednesday. I grouped these 4 questions together because they're all sort of related, and I thought they were good questions. And all these questions relate essentially to dividends. So going forward. So why would a company choose to declare dividends? Is it purely for tax breaks? Okay, so I'm going to tackle the first question first. So why would a company choose to declare dividends? Some companies, their stock doesn't really fluctuate in price. It just kind of stays the same over time. So as an investor, there are 2 ways to make money on stock. The first way is for the stock price to grow over time. That's one way. The second way is to get dividend income on it. So depending on the type of stock, some companies pay dividends, some don't. Let's take, for example, First Energy. First Energy is the electric company, the utility company. Their stock is not very exciting, to be frank, right? Because they're just generating electricity. And their stock price doesn't fluctuate a whole lot. So an investor who is investing in First Energy expects to get dividend income from that investment. So First Energy has a history of paying dividends, and they're probably going to continue to pay dividends. So that's one reason companies would choose to pay dividends, is because to make investors invest in their stock. If you don't have stock growth, because you're not you're not growing the company, making huge steps forward, you're just kind of maintaining the status quo, then you're going to have to give some income in the form of dividends. So that's the first part. The second one, is it purely for tax breaks? There are absolutely 0 tax breaks for a dividend. A dividend never impacts income, period. So there is no tax break associated with a dividend. Okay, so next question. What is the point of paying dividends if it is not a legal obligation to do so? I think I just answered that. To get investors to invest in your stock, if you're not a growth stock, you're going to have to give them some sort of return, and that's what dividends are. Okay, next one. What are the pros and cons of a business declaring a dividend? Well, the pros are if you declare a dividend, if you keep declaring dividends, your shareholders are happy, your stock will be valued higher because it has an income component. So those are some pros. Cons of declaring a dividend is you have to give up the cash, okay? And sometimes you don't have the cash to do it. So the cons would be the cash flow involved. And then this last one, if dividends are not a liability until they are declared, how would there be dividends in arrears? I love this question. Great question. Thank you for whoever asked it. So let me tackle this as a couple parts. Dividends in arrears. Dividends in arrears are all the skipped preferred dividends. So let me back up just a minute. Preferred stock is the stock that pays a percentage of par value if a dividend is declared. Preferred stock can be cumulative preferred stock. And cumulative preferred stock means that if you skip a dividend, if you do not pay a dividend in a given year, you have to go back and pay it before you can ever pay any common shareholder. So cumulative preferred stock, it's not a liability to have these skipped dividends, but if you ever want to pay common shareholders a single penny of dividends, you have to go back and pay all the skipped preferred dividends from the beginning of time. Whatever you haven't paid each year, you have to go back and pay. Now, that's not a legal liability until you declare a common dividend, until you declare the dividend, and then it becomes a liability. It's just like a kind of a memo off to the side saying, hey, you've missed all these preferred dividends that you never have to pay unless you want to pay your common shareholders. So dividends in arrears is kind of like a liability in waiting. It's not a liability, but the minute you declare a common dividend, yes, you've got a liability there because you cannot pay your common shareholders until your preferred shareholders are paid. Okay? So great question. Thank you for asking that one. Okay, so then, okay, this was in my 745 class they're not, you guys, but someone pointed out that I inconsistently applied the 5-second rule. So I don't ever cut it short, but once in a while, just so you know, once in a while I will watch, and if a big chunk of class is not seeming to react, then I might play with that rule a little bit. So it's not meant to be hard and fast. I will give you at least 5 seconds after I announce it once in a while, or I start talking about something else and forget. That happens too. So I'm trying. Okay, that said, that segues into, yes, we still have the 5-second rule, so heads up on that. Okay, now we have a handout today. And if you're in the face-to-face class with me, it was at the door. If you're online, it would have been offered up to you, and here it is. We're going to need it today. You're going to need a calculator today. We're going to do some pretty simple calculations, but you will need a calculator. So we are going to dig in. We are in Chapter 11, talking about the income statement and some earnings per share, things like that. And we are only doing learning objectives 1, 4, 5, and 6 only. We are not covering learning objectives 2 and 3. Those have not been in study plan. They're not in the exam. We just don't cover them because one of them is foreign currency gains and losses, kind of picky. If you're an accounting major, you'll get deep into that in later classes. And then the other one's other items on the income statement, which get pretty picky too. And again, if you're an accounting major, don't worry, you'll get all of it later. So we're going to do just the 4 learning objectives, and we're going to do 2 of them today, I believe, probably about 2, maybe get into the 3rd, we'll see. Okay, so first what we're going to do is evaluate the quality of earnings. Now, this handout that you have this box at the top of page 1. Okay, so when we talk about evaluating earnings quality, we're talking about the likelihood that this company will continue to generate this level of earnings or more, or increase over time. So as an investor, if I'm looking at a company to invest in, I want to know, are they going to keep generating income? I want income from this company. I want them to be viable and generating profits. And one thing we look at is earnings quality. So earnings quality, first of all, the first indication of earnings quality is the company is following proper revenue and expense recognition, which companies are. They should be. They have audited financial statements. That tells us that they must be doing things in accordance with rules, hopefully. And then the next things have to do with the numbers. First of all, we want to see a declining or the same cost of goods sold compared to sales. Cost of goods sold is an expense, okay? So we want to see that our cost of goods sold expense is going down over time or staying the same. We don't want to see expenses climbing. We want to see cost of goods sold going down compared to sales. We want to see consistent gross margin or increasing, because gross margin is like income to us. And then finally, we want to see declining operating expenses over time. And these are just 3 factors we can look at that we're picking in this chapter. There's other things we can look at certainly too, but these are 3 examples. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go through an example, and we're going to be looking at 3 things. These are just some of the things we can look at: cost of goods sold, gross margin, and operating expenses. Now, on the handout that I've given you, the bottom of page 1 is an income statement for 1-800-Flowers. And just as a little background, why did I give you 1-800-Flowers? Well, I've been driving down 77 for years and years and years, and I've always wanted to stop at that Harry London chocolate factory along the way by the airport. So over break, I went on their chocolate tour, and it was really cool. It's a free chocolate tour, and you see how they make their chocolates. But as part of that, they did their spiel about their history. And Harry London was actually a steel worker in Canton. And around the turn of the century, his father was teaching him how to make chocolates. So you have a steel worker by day, and then in the evening, he would make chocolates with his dad. And his dad was from the European area, and he was teaching him how to make chocolate because chocolate is an art to get it. So after a while, his family and friends kept saying, oh, we want chocolates, give us chocolates, and he would do these for holidays, and it got to be such a big deal. Finally, in 1922, he quit his steelworking job and opened up Harry London's Chocolates out of his kitchen. And so he made chocolates for several years out of his kitchen in Canton, Ohio, and then in the 1950s, he had a fire at home. He had some devastation at home, and then he opened up an actual store and factory. But in 2006, Harry London was purchased by 1-800-Flowers. 1-800-Flowers owns a whole bunch of things, brands. So 1-800-Flowers owns Harry London now. It also owns Fannie Mae. All of the chocolate, by the way, for Harry London, for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, for Fannie Mae and Harry London is made in North Canton, virtually all of it. So they took over the operation. So they do a lot of chocolate making down in Canton. But anyway, so they also own 1-800-Baskets. They own Cheryl's Cookies. They own Fruit Bouquets. They own a lot of different brands like that. And so I thought, well, this is interesting to look at 1-800-Flowers because we have a significant chunk of their operations here in Canton. Okay, so first of all, we're going to look at cost of goods sold. So cost of goods sold. Now, what we're going to do, a lot of times we have these ratios that we use. The ratio names of terms don't exactly match companies' financial statements. Companies name their financial statements however they want. There's a lot of common terminology. So when we're looking at cost of goods sold, we want to take the cost of goods sold divided by the sales. Now, Harry London, or 1-800-Flowers, isn't technically a manufacturer overall because they have a lot of floral shops. So they call theirs, instead of calling it cost of goods sold, they call it cost of sales. So just know that when we look at their financial statement, cost of sales is cost of goods sold. And then they don't call it sales, they call it net revenues. And that's fine, we'll work with that. So when we go from, when we look, say, in our book and it talks about cost of goods sold, cost of sales is the same thing. It just depends how the company names it itself. So names don't always, we've got a lot of different close names, and that's why we talk about a lot of different close names. Okay, so on the bottom of your handout, you have this income statement. So this income statement came from 1-800-Flowers.com's Form 10K. A Form 10K is the annual report, a set of financial statements, and a whole bunch of writing that is submitted to the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, once a year. Once a year, companies have to submit their financial statements to the SEC. So then they're publicly available. You can download the financial statements for any publicly held company because they have to be filed with the SEC. So this is its financial statement. This is its income statement. They call it their statement of income. Sometimes they're called statement of operations. But they're required, companies are required to file 3 years of income statements every year, so side-by-side comparison. They have 2 years of balance sheets, but they file all their statements. The Form 10K generally is around 100 to 115 pages, but somewhere in there you find their financial statements and then the notes. So anyways, I took their income statement and I consolidated it some so that it wouldn't be quite as many lines. So what we're going to be doing here is now I'm going to wipe out, because I want to put the calculations on the same slide, so I'm going to wipe out the heading for the statement, which I cringe about because we should always keep the heading with it, but I'm getting rid of it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to do the cost of goods sold to sales ratio, and to do that, I'm going to take the cost of revenues, because they call it their cost of sales or cost of revenues, which is like cost of goods sold, and I'm going to divide it by the net revenues, and I will get then 56.6%. Okay, that's 2015. Now notice something interesting here too is look at their year endings. We have June 28th, 2015. We have June 29th, 2014. June 30th, 2013. I did not look it up, but I suspect like the last Saturday in June or the last Sunday in June or something like that. So their year end ends at the end of June somewhere, and that's fine. Companies can pick year ends that don't coincide with the calendar. They just have to always use the same year end. Okay, so in 2015, we have 56.6% as our cost of goods sold to sales ratio. Now, one number by itself doesn't mean anything. We look at that and we say, well, I don't have any point of reference for what 56.6% means. So I can do 2014 as well. So 2014, I'm going to take my cost of revenues from 2014, divide by my net revenues in 2014, and I will end up with 58.3%. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking the cost of revenues divided by net revenues. Now, for 2013, this is the question for you to answer. You will have to, this is one of those ones you need to calculate now. You need to calculate their cost of goods sold to sales ratio. Oh, good. 99% correct. Cool. Okay, on this one, you're going to be taking the cost of revenues divided by net revenues. This is a computational one, so I'm going to invoke my 15-second rule at this point. Okay, final seconds. Okay. So you're taking your cost of revenues dividing by your net sales. Now, when we look at this, okay, so now I have another question. I'm intentionally not delivering it yet, so hold on here. So now what we need to do is we need to interpret what we just did. So we can do the mathematical calculation, but 2013, okay, 2013, we had a cost of goods sold to sales ratio of 58.5%. What does that mean? That means that if someone bought something for $1 from us, 58.5 cents of it would be expense, right? So 58.5 cents expense in 2013. So then we go to 2014. 2014, when someone gives us $1 in sales, it's going to be 58.3% or 58.3 cents of expense. So our expense has fallen. That's a good thing, right? And then in 2015, we look at our cost of goods sold to sales ratio. It's gone down to 56.6%. So what we're seeing here is our expenses have gone down, which is a good thing, okay? So when we talk about this, our expenses going down, that is an improvement to us, that we're having fewer expenses. You want increasing profit and you want decreasing expenses. So when you interpret things like this, don't look for, oh, it's going down, it must be getting worse. Don't look for if it's going up, it's good. It's not the case. You have to think about what it is. In this case, we're measuring expense. So I'm going to put this one up. Okay, on this one. So when we interpret this, again, having decreasing expenses over time, and we did decrease our expense ratio. It decreased from 58.5% in 2013 down to 56.6%, which is an improvement, right? It's an improvement because we have less expenses. So now we're into the 5-second rule. Okay, so that one is improving. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So we're looking at 3 factors of earnings quality. The next one, gross margin. Now the first thing to say about gross margin is it lives under a different name sometimes. Gross margin is also gross profit. They mean the same thing. It depends on the company if they're going to call it gross margin or gross profit. It's a company preference. So when we look at 1-800-Flowers, we're looking at the gross margin as a percent of sales. So what percentage of every sales dollar is profit is what we're asking. Gross margin is sales minus cost of goods sold. That's how we're getting down to this. So gross profit, and again, for 1-800-Flowers, our sales is net revenues on their financial statement. So we're using the same income statement. We're not moving off the income statement. Same income statement, and now we're going to do this ratio. So gross margin to sales is where we are. Okay, so back to our income statement. So our income statement, again, we're going to do gross margin to sales. So for 2015, we're going to take 1-800-Flowers gross profit of $487,195 divide by net revenues, and we get 43.4%. Okay. Next up, 2014, we'll do the same thing. We'll move over, take the gross profit from 2014, divide by the net revenues, and get 41.7%. Okay, and then for 2013, that's for you to do some more calculations. Okay, now, gross margin to sales. So again, you're going to be taking your gross profit, dividing by net revenues. Okay, so you're going to divide those. We are now to the 15-second rule. Okay, 41.5%. Okay, now, so what we've got here is gross margin to sales. So this is saying, so in 2013, if a customer came in and bought something for $1, then 41.5% of that $1 would be gross profit, which profit's good. So in 2014, that same customer comes in and buys something else for $1, we get 41.7 cents, which has gone up a little bit, which is good. And then in 2015, customer returns, buys something for $1, and now we have 43.4 cents of profit, okay? So now it looks like we're getting more profit. So that's the next question that's coming up. Okay. This is gross margin to profit ratio, the question that's on your screen. Okay, so the question is, and it's on your screen, a little bit of a copy paste gone wrong here. The question that you're answering is, over the 3 years shown, is 1-800-Flowers gross margin to sales ratio improving, getting worse, or staying the same? Okay, so again, answer the question that you've got in front of you. Okay, now on this one, let's think, because right now, over half of you have it wrong, okay? So look at the question that's on your screen. I have a copy and paste. Let me do this. Let me just draw this here. Okay, there's a mismatch on my screen right now, right? Okay, that right there, substitute, it's on your Learning Catalytics screen correctly. Okay, so it's asking, over the 3 years shown, is 1-800-Flowers gross margin to sales ratio improving, deteriorating, staying the same? Okay, gross margin ratio. Okay, over 3 years. Gross margin is a kind of profit. Okay, think about yourself. Would you rather have more profit or less profit? Okay, as a company, we assume we want more. We want increasing profit. Earnings quality is higher as our profit increases. We're saying our gross margin is gross profit. It was 41.5% in 2013. It's grown to 43.4% in 2015. So our profit has increased, and increased profit is good. So when you interpret this, this is going to be an improvement over the 3 years. So 5-second rule. Okay, so it is improving. So with this, when I'm asking you, you're going to be asked to interpret ratios. You have to think about what it's referring to. The last example, when we had the cost of goods sold ratio, we wanted that to go down because it was expenses. This is profit. We want it to go up, okay, to improve. Okay, so now our next set of earnings quality ratios that we're going to talk about are operating expenses. Operating expenses are just another set of expenses. They're they're not directly in generating sales, but they're all the support costs we need. So when we look at 1-800-Flowers income statement, we're going to be taking operating expenses dividing by sales. And again, sales are the net revenues for 1-800-Flowers. Okay, so looking at our income statement again, for 2015, we're taking our operating expenses, dividing by our net revenues, coming up with 40.1%. We'll do that same thing for 2014. We'll take our operating expenses, divide by our net revenues, and we get 38.6%. Okay? So for 2013, again, we're going to do this calculation. We're going to be taking our operating expenses, dividing by net revenues. So I'll give you a little time to calculate that. Okay, on this one, what you're going to be doing is you're going to take the operating expenses, divide by net revenues. Okay, that's what you're doing in this calculation. And yes, I am going to be wildly inconsistent here because it is a calculation. 15 seconds now. We're going to close this question. I should have a big buzzer. Oops, time's up. Okay, so the answer was 38%. Okay, now looking at what we just did now, so now we have to interpret this ratio, these ratios. So, have not pushed the question out yet, but we are measuring expenses. So we're saying this is our expense ratio. Think about whether you want expenses or not in terms of interpreting this. Is this ratio, the ratio starts at 2013, 38%. Then it went up to 38.6%. Then it went to 40.1% in 2015. So it increased. The question is that an improvement or a deterioration? Okay, so where are we here? Okay, but 68% of you have it right now, so I think that warrants a little talking here. So when I'm looking at this, think about operating expenses. Do you want expenses to be increasing? Okay, if you think this is improving, if you picked A, you're saying it's a great thing that their expenses went from 38% to 40% of sales. Okay, and that doesn't really make any sense, does it? Because you want your expenses to be decreasing over time. So you really need to pay attention to what we're measuring underneath. So we've seen this is actually getting worse. It's deteriorating, right? Because we went from 38 and they're climbing. So 5-second rule. Okay, so it is deteriorating. Okay, So with that, we're finishing out the first segment, the earnings quality segment, and we're going into a new segment now. Now we're into learning objective 4. So we just skipped over learning objectives 2 and 3. We're into 4, where we compute earnings per share. Earnings per share is what it sounds like. It's earnings per share common stock, roughly. We're going to get into more detail. And where we're heading now is the top of page 2. We'll get there in a minute. We're not quite there, but that's where we'll be. So, a couple things. Now we're going to be into this idea that we get our financial statements audited. And the first thing, I'm going to emphasize this over and over so you might see it again. Every publicly held company is required to produce audited financial statements. Okay. Publicly held means your stock is on a stock market and investors can buy it. Okay, every publicly held company has to produce audited financial statements. Audit means that an independent auditor, somebody not in your company, not related to you in any way, shape, or form, they come in and they look for documentation of everything you've done, and they say, it looks like you've done it right or not, and we're going to follow up more with that as we go further. But in the meantime, we're going back to earnings per share. Earnings per share, it's in your handout. This formula is at the top of the handout. Earnings per share is basically the net income available to common shareholders divided by the weighted average number of common shares outstanding, which is a mouthful. It's basically saying, here's our net income, let's divide by the number of common shares outstanding. Okay? Now, earnings per share, there's two kinds of earnings per share. You only will have, there's something called earnings per share dilution, which we need to talk about. There's two earnings per share figures on potentially on companies' income statements. There's going to be earnings per share, the basic earnings per share, and then there's something called diluted earnings per share or fully diluted earnings per share. And what that is we have to go backwards a minute here and talk about something called convertible preferred stock. Okay, convertible preferred stock is preferred stock. So preferred stock comes first in liquidation. It pays a % of par. It's a dividend. And if it says it's convertible, that means at some later date, preferred stockholders could take their stock and convert it into common shares. So a really neat example of convertible preferred stock. The company Crocs, you know, that makes those shoes, Crocs. Crocs has been struggling for the last few years because they were kind of like a one-trick pony. They've got a whole line of Crocs out. But last year, I think it was last year, they were struggling for money. They needed kind of to be bailed out. So an investor group came along and said, oh, we'll invest in you. Crocs was teetering maybe on the edge of bankruptcy. That would not that they're going into bankruptcy, but it would not be out of the realm of possibility. So the investor came along and said, we believe in you. We think that if you clean up your operations, come out with some new models, there's still hope. So here's millions of dollars, we're going to invest in you. But we want preferred stock, because preferred stock, if you do go out of business, we want to collect our investment before the common shareholders. But preferred stock isn't very attractive over the long run, because preferred stock, all you do is you get a percentage of the par if they declare a dividend. If they don't declare a dividend, you will never get anything. Where you make the big money in companies is buying the common stock. You buy the common stock. Common stock is where you see the stock price grow, grow, grow. As the company grows, as it has profits, it drives the stock price on the stock market. So then hopefully you would have bought low and then you could sell high later. That's where you make the money. So this investor that came in to rescue Crocs by saying we want preferred stock said, make it convertible preferred stock. So then 2 years from now, if we've bailed you out and you're doing great and your stock price is climbing, then we can take our preferred stock and trade it in for common stock, and that's the convertible feature. So it gives them the best of both worlds. They're first in line if Crocs does go out of business, but they have the ability to share in the profits. If Crocs does really well, they can trade in their preferred stock for common stock. So that's convertible preferred stock. So if a company has convertible preferred stock, we have to calculate earnings per share 2 ways. We have to first have ordinary earnings per share, which is our net income divided by our number of common shares outstanding. And then the second, the fully diluted earnings per share, is smaller because what we do is we take the net income and we divide by the total possible number of common shares outstanding, as if everybody converted their preferred stock into common stock. So that's what fully diluted is. Okay, so we're back to 1-800-Flowers and their income statement. You don't need to calculate this. I just wanted to show you this. This is their income statement. I'm superimposing on here the calculation of the earnings per share. Basically what they're doing is we're taking the basic income available to common shareholders. 1-800-Flowers doesn't have any preferred stock. So we take their net income, we're going to divide by their weighted average shares outstanding, which they gave it to us in their financial statements, so I'm going with their numbers. And you take basic income, divide by the number of shares, and you get 31 cents in 2015, 24 cents in 2014, and 19 cents in 2013. And so what happened is, think about this, back in 2013, every common share had earnings per share of 19 cents. In 2014, it improved to 24 cents. So this is actually cents per share. And then in 2015, it's 31 cents. By the way, 1-800-Flowers has, the analysts since November last year have been saying this is a buy, this is a good investment, and so they did things like the earnings quality that we did, and they're doing things like this. Their earnings per share is climbing, which is what companies want. You saw mostly declining expenses, so they've been doing okay on the stock market in the last 4 months or so. Okay, now my next example is a fictitious example. It is on your handout because this is about preferred stock. And once we get into preferred stock and convertible stock, real life gets really, really messy. So we just have a fictitious example here. So we have 2 kinds of stock. We have preferred stock and common stock, right? And we have treasury stock. Treasury stock is our own common stock we bought back, okay? And then it tells us their earned net income. Now, to do this example, we're going to need to make a few calculations. So you have the top half of the slide on your handout. You'll need to write down these calculations as we go. First of all, we need to calculate the preferred dividend. The preferred dividend is going to be the par value times the number of shares issued times 2%. So what I'm going to do, the $220,000 is the par value for all the shares times 2%. So the preferred dividend is $4,400. Then we need to calculate the weighted average number of common shares outstanding. We're just given the common shares, but we're given the common shares of 1,100,000 shares issued. Notice it doesn't say outstanding. To get to outstanding, you have to take the issued and subtract the treasury stock shares. So we will take the 1,100,000 shares, subtract the treasury stock, to get our outstanding shares. Okay, so we've got those 2 numbers. So then what we can do to get our earnings per share, we're going to take our income, which was given to us, $6,200,000, subtract our preferred dividends of $4,400, divided by our number of shares outstanding, the 980,000, and we get earnings per share of $6.32. Did that just go? Okay, so there was that example. One of these earnings per share. So the takeaway, earnings per share, is the amount, the income available to common stockholders. This is kind of boiled down to the beat of it. Income available to common stockholders divided by the number of common shares outstanding. Notice that we have to subtract out treasury shares to get to that outstanding. So that word outstanding is important. Okay, so notice we've got this income, and we're dividing by the number of outstanding common shares, right? We always, when we get earnings per share, it's always per share of what? Per common share outstanding, or outstanding common shares. Okay, so that said, brings us to our next question. Earnings per share is the amount of company's net income per share of what? Per share of what? Okay, on this one, keep in mind that we just had this. This is what we're talking about. Earnings per share is the income available to common stockholders. So that's the net income per share of what? Divided by the common shares outstanding. So that's what we're going with. We're going with the outstanding common shares. That's what the denominator is always on earnings per share. So common shares outstanding, we can rearrange those words and it still means outstanding common shares. Okay, so per share of what? Outstanding common stock. 5 seconds invoked here. Okay. Okay, so that brings us to the end of what we're doing today. I just sent out a feedback question. If you have any questions that weren't answered today, feel free to submit them. And I will see you on Wednesday, and have a great day.